Tony Beall. What day is it?
Today is Friday, Fundraisers Friday.
Awesome. Well, I've been really anticipating this conversation because as we mentioned in the green room, with all the time that you and I've spent together in the green room, on camera, off camera, yes, Tony and I have actually met each other in IRL, in real life, even though he lives in the East and I live in the West. But we've never really talked about joint fundraising efforts before. They're super tricky. They're very interesting. And I think there's a lot of fear around it. I know we've both been involved in them, some successfully, some not. And so we're going to dig into this today about can they really work and what can make them work. What makes us work on the Nonprofit Show are our amazing presenting sponsors. They include Bloomerang, American Nonprofit Academy, Staffing Boutique, Holdings Nonprofit Banking, Interim Executives Academy, Your Part-Time Controller, Fundraisers Friday, and JMT Consulting. I'm Julia C. Patrick, CEO of the American Nonprofit Academy, joined today by the amazing Tony Beall, Mr. Nonprofit Consultancy. He is also the co-author of The Architecture of Fundraising. Talk to us about this.
I love that you're fundraising. It's like and boom, boom, pow. So yeah, Julia. So it was, again, a really fun project. Thank you for your trust. It was so much fun to collaborate with you and our executive producer Kevin on this book. So yeah, the Architecture of Fundraising. It's called the Architecture of Fundraising because we really looked at multiple pillars that exist within this space, and the focusing on you as the fundraiser and how do you kind of navigate all the challenges and nuances that exist. So that's the building a career part of the book, and then donor relationships and building relationships. And then if you're leading a team or you're managing a nonprofit, how do you know when it's the right time to expand your team? How do you retain your team? So then there's all of the information around just keeping a really healthy, if you will, work environment for folks that are doing this important work.
Yeah, it's really an interesting read. I'm very proud of it. I'm really excited that you and I could come together on this concept. I think a lot of times, Tony, and I get sent a lot of books, right? A lot of books. And a lot of times books that deal with fundraising, it's like, this is the way you do it. Step A, A1, A, B, it's like all this stuff. And if you don't do it in this right order, you're not going to raise the dime. And I think what's so cool about this book is it talks about the ecosystem of the sector and what to think about and how to approach it as you would if you were an architect, drawing up that structure for your work. And it covers a lot of different things. It really does. So I love it. Just got to say. Available on Amazon, so get your copy today. Okay. Let's talk about the topic at hand, another fundraising issue and a joint fundraising action. So you have done some work in this area. Talk to us about what are some examples, and then if you wouldn't mind sharing about your specific example of joint fundraising.
Sure. Well, and like you said at the top of the show, Julia, we've talked about collaboration at kind of a high level in many of our conversations. So collaboration and programming and grant writing. So I'm really excited today that we can talk more specifically about what collaboration looks like in fundraising, and even more specifically, what that looks like with event fundraising. Because that's really my lived experience is collaboration in fundraising, in a fundraising event. Just the benefits that exist in that, the shared resources. So this really works for small to medium-sized organizations. Okay. So organizations that don't have a lot of capacity. You may have an organization that's really great with their social media and their marketing. You have another organization that's really great with event logistics and what should the room look like and what should the flow be.
Mhm.
So bringing these smaller organizations together that all have kind of this one power place, if you will, whatever that is, and then they're sharing that talent and that bandwidth with with one another to create something meaningful that's going to raise money for each of their organizations.
Right. So you had a fascinating experience with an organ. Well, I'd say with a mission, and then we'll go from mission on down. Could you talk about that, please?
Sure. So I think what's really important when you talk about collaboration in the fundraising space is that each of the organizations are serving the same community. And so when I say serving the same community, that can be defined in many different ways. I'm not necessarily saying a zip code or geography when I say serving the same community. It may be that you're serving youth, that you're serving seniors, that you're serving folks living with and dealing with their cancer journey. It may be that you're serving pets. So when I talk about the community that you're serving, it really is about, who benefits from the programs and services of your organization. So start there. Make sure that there's alignment in terms of the community that's benefiting from the work of all of the organizations that are coming together to create this one single experience that'll financially benefit all of them.
Mm-hmm. I go to an event every holiday in my community. It's called Holiday Prelude. I actually went to this event as a little girl with my grandmother, Patrick, whom I adored.
Uh,
And it was a bunch of ladies in our city who said, everybody wants to do a holiday event to support their cultural organization. And back then, it was really rudimentary because we were a new city. And, all these years, decades, now 4 decades later, this group has pulled together this very consistent holiday event. It kind of kicks off the holiday season, and the proceeds benefit these major, well, not even major, but cultural institutions, right? And I think it's what's important. It's what you said. It's like so many of these groups could never do this on their own. They could never pull this off. It's just
mhm.
too exhaustive. But yet this core group of people, now multi-generational, have kept this thing alive. And it's really, it's like how it works when it works best, right? And so it's a super cool thing to witness that. You mentioned that you really need to keep the alignment of the mission. And I think that's an interesting thing because a lot of times what I see, and I'd love your feedback on this, is that within a segment of our sector, let's say it's domestic violence, and you're talking about shelters, there's competition. There's a sense that I don't want to share my cheese, or we do it better than they do it, or whatever. How should we look at this?
Yeah, so I would say if your programs and services are so the two or three organizations, let's say, and in your example, if your programs and services are so aligned, it may not be a great partnership. It just may not be.
Okay.
But let's say with the shelter, maybe one shelter is better at career placement, helping folks with kind of the next step. Once they're able to leave the shelter, and I don't want to say anything that sounds stupid or lacks empathy, so I'll just say forgive me if I don't explain this the right way. But maybe the one organization again is better at helping folks as they transition out of a shelter. Then what I would do with that partnership is making sure that there isn't that competitive language that we're all offering shelters. This is what we do, and this is what we do. And everyone just kind of agrees that they do a little bit of a better job at that.
Yeah, I think you're right. I also think too that you can look at this in a geographic manner. So in terms of my community, that is the 5th largest city in America, we have a lot of land, right? It can take an hour to 2 hours to get from one side of the city to the other, not because of traffic, just because of distance.
Sure.
And so to say, East Valley, West Valley, North Valley, South Valley, whatever, I think you can do that geographic piece of it.
You could very much so. That's a great example in that scenario. Absolutely.
But again, I think what you said is magical, and that's the starting point of alignment, making sure that everybody is on the same topic, because otherwise it just doesn't work. So you brought up this, and we say this every once in a while, MOU, and people are like, what? I never heard of the MOU not moniker until I got on my first board. It's basically a contract, but it's a memo of understanding. Let's talk about that. And what do you see? How do you see this working?
Sure. And if you don't want to call it an MOU, then call it a partnership agreement, or just, or call it something else. But it is so, and I'm just, for our listeners and viewers, but what's really important is that you do it. It's just a reminder that we are running a business. And if you were going to align with another business, you would have some type of an agreement with that business. It's critical for all of the points stated on this slide, Julia. What are the shared costs? What is the marketing plan? Who is investing what resources into the project or the event in terms of the labor division? And then the event management, who's managing volunteers, who's managing logistics for night of. So all of that is so clearly spelled out in the MOU. Also, if there are any costs up front, if there are any deposits that need to be made, all of that is outlined. How are we dividing the net funds that are raised from the event? So all of that is really important in the MOU. And one of the most critical parts of the MOU is defining the fiscal agent for the event. So out of the 2, 3, or 4 organizations that are collaborating, which one is going to serve as the fiscal agent?
And I love that you brought that up, because that to me is probably the sticky wicket of this whole concept, right? Because I think you brought up something really good, is you can't put on an event. I don't care if it's a community walk around a park without costs up front. And somebody's going to have to bear those costs and manage them. And that's a heavy lift for a lot of organizations.
It is a heavy lift. And we talked a little bit in the green room too about how, at least in my experience, the organizations that have come together to support one another in an event like this are all very small organizations, some with no more than 2 staff members. So really, again, defining what resources are going to be needed and who is going to allocate those resources is really, really critical. And it's something that needs to be done right out of the gate. It's the first thing that you do is you create your MOU and you get that worked out and signed, and then you can move on to the fun stuff.
I love that you said that. Well, yeah, I mean, it's a really, I got to believe, Tony, and I don't have any personal experience on this, but just from kind of hearing, gossip in my community and from other nonprofit leaders, there are a lot of groups that have a joint fundraising idea that can't get out of the gate because they can't get the MOU done. And it's like a grand idea that maybe just a couple people come up with. But when all of the participants get together, there's like a little bit of, fervor and upset that kind of gets created. And I want to kind of end this part of our conversation with, it seems to me that it's ego driven.
Well, sometimes it's ego driven. And sometimes it's driven just through a lack of trust and understanding.
Okay.
And I say that from a board level, sometimes a board will say, no, we're not going to do that. And it just comes from a lack of understanding of the trust that exists from the folks that are the boots on the ground. Like,
Yeah.
the executive directors of the organizations all have a lot of trust, amongst one another. They belong to AFP together or some other organization together. They see each other all the time in the community. They have trust and understanding. So they may be, stronger advocates for this kind of collaboration than board members would be, because they don't have that same level of trust and understanding with the folks that will actually make it happen.
Okay, I love that. Was a kind and generous way to wrap it up. But I think what you just said bleeds into this next issue, and that has to do with another boundary, and that's donors, and that's that portfolio that we try to protect, and we're secretive. And how do you have a joint event when you have a donor database? Do you share it? Do you how do you see this working out?
Yeah, so in my lived experience, we had that, and that was spelled out in the MOU as well.
Okay.
What are we going to do? So the marketing, all of the marketing that took place came from each individual organization. So no one shared any lists. Every organization, once marketing assets were created and there was consensus on the assets, then it was the responsibility of each individual organization to market the event to their database and their lists. So there was no sharing of lists. So all of that was confidential and kept close. Now, what do we do with the event list? Because that's a different animal. So there was the agreement that the attendee list would be shared with all of the organizations. And then, and so when someone signed up for the event, there was a little box that they checked that would give the organizations permission to reach out to them. So that we had, again, that green light, if you will, from attendees, that the other organizations can reach out to them. So we really were very mindful and thoughtful about the donor experience with these organizations coming together.
So I love that you drew that arc through the process, that journey of an event management, coming together. There's so many nuts and bolts to this thing. And we certainly could spend hours on this topic, because it is at the core event management, like 202, not even 101. I mean, it's a really big deal. Talk to us about how you see post-event media and coverage, and how that resonates with organizations that might be, frankly, short-staffed or small. How important would this be to you?
Yes, so it's really exciting in today's environment, because we have so many social media platforms that we can use. So, for example, if we look at Facebook events, so again, in my experience, Facebook was around with this particular example. And so we created an event page for the event. So there was a lot of post-event media that took place on that social media page. And again, one or maybe two of the organizations were assigned responsibility to manage that page. So if I'm one of the four organizations that post-event, because I'm the team member, and so post-event, I don't have the bandwidth right now to do a lot of that follow-up media. At least I know it's happening on the event page. But again, post-event assets were created. It was primarily the responsibility of each individual organization to send post-event messaging out to their lists. But we did have visibility on social media platforms that someone was responsible for managing and sending out messaging.
Right. I think this is such a critical thing. I think especially if you pull together a team that looks at this and says, wow, we can do something annually, or we can work together. And, this is kind of what the journey could look like. And this is who takes these roles and responsibilities. Probably going to be super tough the first year, but then as we know in event management, you learn and you grow and you navigate forward. So that leads me to one of my favorite things, and I don't think we do this enough in just the daily course of nonprofit work and certainly events, and that is the postmortem. Talk about what you've seen in postmortems and maybe what you haven't seen.
Well, it's so important, especially in this type of collaboration environment, is to make sure that you set the time. It should just be part of your timeline for the event. Is sometime soon after the event, not like 2 months later, but sometime soon after the event, for everyone to come together and talk about what was the experience like for my organization. Were there things that we forgot to include in the MOU that we might want to include moving forward? What did we hear from, our volunteers and our guests that attended the event? So really being able to have that transparent and honest conversation about everyone's experience. And does it make sense to do it again? I can tell you one of my experiences, everyone said, this was great. We all raised some money, but I wouldn't do it again. And there were very legitimate reasons why perhaps it was not right to do it a second time. Like the first time was a home run. Everybody got what they wanted to out of it. But maybe it's not designed to live on forever, and that's okay.
Right. I love that you said that, because I think that's really brave, and I think that it's reality. It's reality. I mean, because especially to your point, recognizing that the majority of our 1.8 million registered nonprofits in this country are small. And so we can have grandiose ideas and big hearts, but that's not always enough to carry forth, towards success. And so, to honestly take a look at that and say, this isn't going to work, is a pretty powerful notion. In preparing for this discussion today on Fundraisers Friday, I've been thinking about this, and honest to goodness, in my community, I can't really think but more than just a handful of joint events going on. What are you seeing?
Yeah, I don't see that many joint events taking place. And I think it's going to take a while after COVID for us to ramp up again to where we will see more of that type of collaboration happening. I will tell you that I'm super proud of a recent collaboration that our Broward County AFP chapter had with the Miami Dade County AFP chapter. And this is, I believe, the second year, maybe it's the third, but I think it's the second year that we've collaborated on professional development opportunities. So we did a Fundamentals of Fundraisers course. It was a one-day training for folks, mostly emerging leaders in fundraising. But we did that collaboratively. We have an MOU. The fiscal agent changes year after year. So do some of the task responsibilities. But I think, we talk about events, but I also love seeing the collaboration that's taking place with a lot of the professional development opportunities that are being offered, to folks in their own backyards.
So help me out, because I'm not that familiar with Florida. I mean, I have family there from my husband's side, but can you give me a sense of population and distribution and distance between those two counties? I mean, do they have do they work together normally, or are they pretty separate? Do you see where I'm
geographically, yeah, Broward County and Miami-Dade County are right up against each other.
Okay.
But they are very different communities, very different markets. So a collaborative event would be very challenging.
Okay.
Plus the
Interesting.
distance too, like it's not really that far, and I don't know the exact miles. Maybe Fort Lauderdale is about 35, 40 miles from Miami. I could be wrong.
Okay.
So an event doesn't really work, but the collaboration for professional development really does work, regardless of what market you're working in. These strategies work in your market. But the type of event and what it looks like are very different between the two counties.
Interesting. Well, I wonder if that might be the seed of some collaboration within your memberships, right? I mean, going forward, you've got a library association from Broward County and one from Miami-Dade, and then they're like, hey, we should get together. Do you see where I'm saying going with that? I mean, it's going to be interesting for you all to track. I know you're going to be the AFP chair for 2026, correct? For
sure.
For your chapter. It might be really interesting to see if that has sparked anything.
Well, we are definitely having more crossover in terms of professional development. There's also a webinar coming up that we're promoting, amongst the two membership groups. So we'll see if any of the membership, and maybe I'll spearhead a convening for folks to convene from Miami-Dade and Broward to have a conversation if there's any combined fundraising for similar missioned organizations that they're interested in pursuing.
Okay, well, you need to invite the nonprofit show. We need to get to Florida and chat about this, because I think this is just riveting. I really do, and I really hadn't thought about something you just said before we end up. The issue of COVID putting the brakes on a lot of events anyway. Mm-hmm. And so people are just kind of trying to figure out how to deal with that whole ecosystem. And so now maybe there's going to be more opportunity to think in a different way. So This has been a fabulous conversation. Thank you.
Oh, good. Thank you. No, we could sit here for another half hour or an hour, really digging deep, into the possibilities.
Yeah,
absolutely. When it works, it really works. When it doesn't work, it really doesn't work. So there's no gray area in event collaboration. It either is awesome or it's not.
Right. Well, hopefully we've given our viewers and listeners some tools and some ideas on how to tackle this project, or even address it, and to think about, can you be successful in your community? I loved this conversation. You and I off camera have spoken about, we have been involved in these things, and it's really special, and it's frankly perilous, is to your point. So before we let you go, we want to make sure that we remind everybody that the Architecture of Fundraising, which it was co-written by Tony Beall and Julia C. Patrick, is out now on Amazon, and we would love to get you to read it and let us know what you think about it. If you've got questions or topics that you would like us to explore, throw them our way. We want to know what's on your mind and what you're seeing and thinking about in your communities. You can reach out to us at info@AmericanNonprofitAcademy.com, and certainly on all of our socials. Tony and I are very active on there. We are also very active with our presenting sponsors, because they are here. Oh my gosh, Tony, I totally spaced. You know what? Today is our 1400th episode.
That's right. Congratulations. I remember you mentioning that was coming up. Wow, that is amazing. I think today's like my 93rd time of the show.
That's amazing. Well, I do this work, and my team does this work every day. And so it's just a number. And
those are all my virtual fireworks for the 1400 show.
Oh my God.
There we go.
Thank you, Kevin Pace, our executive producer, always on the right cutting edge of these things. Yeah, well, we are here because of these amazing partners, and they include Bloomerang, American Nonprofit Academy, Staffing Boutique, Holdings Nonprofit Banking, Interim Executives Academy, Your Part-Time Controller, Fundraisers Friday, and JMT Consulting. These are the folks that have been on this journey, most all of these folks from the beginning. And so that is really powerful. And I want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart. I also want to end with this message. And we really started saying this 1,400 episodes back. And that was because of COVID. But it means so much more to me now when I say it each and every day. And the message is to stay well so you can do well.